We are thrilled. Chris and I are thrilled to have Madison Prewett Troutt with us. We're going to call you Maddie because that's why the world knows you, by the way. But, man, what a fantastic story you have. What a impression you've made on literally millions of people, 1.7 million followers on your Instagram. So you have a lot of influence, and you're using it, Maddie, in the right way to point people towards Jesus. So that's why we have you on. And I've known your dad for a long time. Assistant coach at Auburn. I'm going to see him here shortly. A lot. I've seen him in college basketball season. But you grew up a hooper yourself, right?
I did.
Yeah, and your dad was a college coach. And so just talk us through a little bit about how you guys kept basketball from not overpowering your home, your life, your heart. How you kept that in balance. Because you come from an athletic family that loves the Lord. I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that balance sometimes.
Yeah, no, I love that question. I definitely would say I spent all of my time either at the church or at the basketball gym.
That's good.
That was literally my life. And so I grew up, and that was all I knew. Like, my first pair of shoes were Jordans. And my dad was a high school coach when I was little. And so I would spend all my time like trying to compete with all of the little high school players as like a 5 or 6, 7-year-old. And then I would be going on all the like mission trips and retreats and camps. And so I feel like they did a really good job. My parents did a really good job of modeling, hey, our relationship with Jesus is our foundation of everything that we do. Our faith is the foundation of everything that we do, and everything else in our life is just adding on to that, is just building on that. And I feel like they did such a good job modeling that. And so it wasn't something I even had to really ask about. It was just something I saw in their life. I saw as they were super involved in the community and the church and pouring into other people and just loving people well. And so faith and family, like that was just so big for us. And then, of course, just our love for sports, we just couldn't get away from. And so, yeah, I mean, but we also, like, even as I got older and my dad was my coach, because he ended up coaching me later, our motto, just like always, was AO1, which was audience of one. And we just constantly reminded ourselves as a team, as a family, hey, we play for an audience of one. Like, we're not playing for the approval of the crowd or the approval of other people, or even the approval, of winning a championship. We are playing for the audience of one, and committing anything and everything that we do to the Lord, and just knowing that He's put us, here on this team for a reason, and we're going to play in a way that gives Him glory.
Hey, we're taking notes, by the way, when you're talking. We're taking notes. It's not like we're reading our phone and what's the weather outside. We're taking notes because you're coaching us up. We're a really great start. Chris, go ahead, buddy.
No, that's a great start. I need you to come talk to our team. That's I coach middle school sports at Christian school, so we're constantly having those conversations.
I love that.
What an honor and privilege it is to play for the name on the front of our jersey. Your dad, accomplished basketball player, obviously a accomplished coach, an extremely accomplished coach, and yet he's raising a daughter playing basketball. I would love, take us in. I'm a big car ride home type of person. By the way, you can give me whatever the deal was. I'm a big, everybody's like, oh, did you have fun? That's not the Burke car ride homes. But I would love to hear, tell me about the Prewett car ride homes and just how your dad coached you, maybe like the rest of the team, but then maybe differently. I would love to hear that.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one. My dad would love to have a seat at the table right now to listen to this answer. So it's funny because I always would get mad at my dad because he would take it all out on me because I was the point guard. And so he called me the leader of the team. And he's like, I'm not even just coaching you harder because you're my daughter. Like, yes, that's a part of it. But also, you're the leader of the team. And so if anything went wrong, I'm talking about if Sally Sue over here threw the ball out of the gym, he was yelling at me. And I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But it honestly, I will say at the time, it was frustrating in moments and difficult because I'm like, no, Justice, like, get mad at her, not me. But I think as I've gotten older, I'm so appreciative of that. I'm so appreciative of the way he coached me hard. I think for one thing, I think a lot of people could have thought, oh, she's just the point guard or she's just starting because her dad's the coach. But I really appreciated that he showed everyone, like, I don't care if she's my daughter. I don't care, like, who she is. Like, I'm going to coach her, the hardest one on the floor, and make sure everyone sees that. And I think, too, just it really poured into everything in my life. Like, he really showed me how to give 110% in everything I did. He always said 100% isn't enough. Always go the extra mile. And so he really showed me like the power of preparation, the power of just going the extra mile and giving all you got. But there were definitely some special little moments that we shared on the court and in car rides on the way home after a loss. I mean, it was just dead silent for a strong, 45 minutes, hour drive, however long. But also really sweet memories too. Like I always rode together with him, just him and I on the way to any big like game. So any like championship game, like it was always like our time, and we would stop by and get our little sausage biscuit. Like we just had our little like special thing. And he just would remind me of who I am. He would remind me of why I am a leader, and why we play the game that we play. And it was just a really special time. And I even remember like my senior year, we ended up losing the championship game, which is of course everything you work for, right? And we had won so many championship games. We had won, I think, 4 out of 5 championships as I was on varsity. And so this was like one of the only ones that we lost, and it's my senior year. But I just watched as he handled that loss, and I was so like proud. I was like, I am his daughter. I was just so proud as he got our team together, and then he got the other team who just beat us together, and we just prayed. And we all prayed in the center of the basketball court, which I actually thought was really funny because the next day the newspaper actually was talking more about the fact that we were praying than the fact that they beat us and won. And I'm like, Dad, that was strategic, wasn't it? But no, we had our moments of both like yelling and confrontation, and we're screaming in each other's faces. And of course, like I eventually had to be like, yes, sir. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
But then also some really, really sweet moments.
Maddie, you obviously, I think you relate obviously really well to all of our listeners, grown men like Chris and I, moms. I think there'll be a lot of young ladies that will be listening to this episode, passed along maybe by their parents. I think you're in a generation that girls in particular can really struggle with who they are. Because the different voices, as you know, that are in their ear constantly telling them lies about who they are and is this God stuff really real? Just speak to those young ears right now. What would you tell them of any of those girls out there, or even boys that are in that age group right now that, where do I find my anchor? What would you say to them? Because I think they're searching.
Yeah. Gosh, and I've been there.
Okay.
I've been there. I've been there where I've misplaced my identity in sports or in the approval of people. I've been there when I've placed my identity in wanting attention from guys or wanting to be the girl with all the friends and the cool clothes, and I've been there where I dropped the ball on that. But I think as I've just continued to pursue a relationship with the Lord, I think what's been really cool is the more and more that I get closer to him and the more and more I fall in love with him, the more I love his creation and understand the why behind he created it, including myself. And so I think for so long I didn't understand, why am I the way that I am, or, what makes Maddie. And I think just as I've continued to get closer and closer to him, those things just make more sense. And so I think we can often just search for the answers in self-care or in finding it in other people or in finding it in accomplishments. But those things just constantly leave you searching and searching and searching. And I think what I have found in my life is that when I turn to the source of my creator, the one who created me, who's the only one who can define me and tell me who I am, when I turn to the source, like, I no longer am thirsting for the approval of other people. I'm no longer seeking those answers from other things, because I've found all that I need in him. And one thing I always like to say is, when you know whose you are, you know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so when you know who you belong to, you know why you are the way that you are. You know what makes you you. You have confidence in that. And so I think that for me has been so important, because in order to, stand firm in your faith, in order to stay true to your values, like you need to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, well, this world will quickly try and tell you who you are, and they have a lot of thoughts. And so it's like, man, let's turn to our Creator and not the created things for answers, and we'll find everything that we're longing for and looking for.
Mm-hmm. Wow, great stuff. So, Maddie, I have a 15-year-old daughter, Sydney, and this is the Coach Me Up podcast. So I need you to coach me up here, okay?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
We're entering that phase. We're not entering.
Yeah.
We've entered it.
We're in it.
Yeah, we had the first dance date a few weeks ago. That was an experience.
Yeah.
Coach me up. I need a lot of coaching here. Coach me up on how to deal with the potential situation of dating from the lens of, being a protector, but also allowing freedom to live and make mistakes, make choices. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm always telling my teams, I don't want to tell you how to do it. I don't want to tell you how to do it. I want to teach you how to do it, and then I want to let you do it. Right? That's kind of the point. And that's really my heart for what I want for her in this season. But like, I need help. I need you to coach me up from the perspective of somebody that's just gone through this.
So let me tell you, that's a great question. And honestly, one of the very best pieces of advice that I feel like I could give, two things. One, pray. Don't ever underestimate the power of prayer. Because there's going to be moments that we're all going to face where we're going to be put in situations of temptations and pressures. And you want to be praying for those moments, for her to be able to know who she is and to know her beliefs and values, and for those to overpower her feelings and temptations. And so the power of prayer. And then, I would honestly say the one of the biggest things that you can do for her is show her how to value herself. If she doesn't know how to value herself, she is going to try and look for that value in other people, especially guys. And so teaching her how to value herself. And then I'd even say a third is like you just said, just show her what a godly man looks like. Show her, what a man who loves the Lord and fears the Lord and lives life for him looks like. I think that's one thing I grew up saying, I want to marry someone just like my dad. And I said that my whole life. And I would tell my dad, like, I want to marry someone just like you. And, and to me, that just spoke to his character, and it spoke to his devotion to Jesus and the way he loved people, the way he lived his life. I wanted to find a man who did that too. And I think because of that, he set the bar and the standard so high that because I valued myself and because I saw what my dad had and what I ultimately wanted, I didn't settle for anything less than that. I didn't settle for the temporary moments of quick satisfaction or the moments of wanting to fit in or do what everyone else was doing, because I knew my value and I knew the value of what I was praying for and hoping for in a man and in a husband. And so I really, those are my three greatest pieces of advice when it comes to that. Also, I think a conversation with my dad, because he navigated three girls through that. And it's not easy, because that is a really hard stage where, from 13 to 16, I can remember my hormones are going crazy. I'm having thoughts I've never had. People around me are changing and making decisions that they haven't been making, especially now with social media. You're seeing all kinds of things. And so, trust that God is ultimately her protector, but you have such a beautiful role and responsibility as a father. And even just by you asking shows me that you're already doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm trying not to blow it. That's kind of my game plan here. But real quick follow-up. Those are incredible, mantras, big picture things. From a practical standpoint, were we did the boy have to have permission to call you? Did he have to meet dad first before he took you out? How did that go down?
So my dad took the intense approach. There were a few instances where there were some basketball guys who played for him who wanted to ask me on a date, and so my dad was like, "Oh, perfect! They're under my hair, so I get to I get to make sure that they know what they're messing with." And he literally intimidated one guy so much that he threw up everywhere. I'm like, Dad, you can't just make dudes throw up. Come on.
When he came to your prior to the date or
yes,
on the date?
They were
what do you mean?
Hey, I like your daughter, and my dad's just being this intense dad and coach, and the guy literally gets so scared he throws up. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think too, I was my dad's oldest, so I was the first, and so I think he was also navigating a lot with me. And so we were just constantly figuring that one out and constantly having conversations about it. And so I think that was helpful just to, for it to be an honest, open conversation. I'd be and I honestly kind of liked it. I was like, oh, my dad, he's protective. He cares about, he's not going to just let me go out with, whoever. He's really vetting them out. And I think it to me also made it cool that, the guys had a lot of respect for my dad. The guys really feared him in a way and had a lot of respect. And so therefore they had respect for his daughter. And so I think there is that healthy balance. I think it's good for there to be a little bit of intimidation and a little bit of, fear where respect can come in. But I do think eventually, when I turned 16, 17, my parents, did eventually have to get to the point where they were like, hey, we trust you. And I think a big part of that was they were seeing, the steps that I was taking in my relationship with the Lord, and they were seeing that the people that I was spending time with were godly people and were people who I wasn't going to be making crazy decisions with. We were, staying up all hanging out, watching movies and just chilling in living rooms. We weren't going out to parties. But I think there was a time in my life that 15, 16 was a little sketchy for me. And my parents were definitely trying to navigate that one of okay, you're liking boys a little too much and you're liking boys that aren't the best for you. And so honestly, I saw the power of prayer through my mom. There was this one guy that I really liked, and he was a couple years older than me. And my mom just did not have a good feeling about it. And so she started praying and praying and praying. And just literally prayed that, because I was obsessed with him, and she literally prayed that I would just become so disgusted by him, she does not remove all feelings, Lord, take it away completely. And literally one day I came home from school and she asked me about him, and I was like, ew, no, we broke up, ew. And she was like, what? Oh my gosh. And I think just I've seen firsthand, again, just the power of prayer. But I do think I personally love the approach of a guy having to come to you and ask you for permission to take your daughter on a date. And for there to be a little bit of that intimidation and just respect and being a little hard on him. I think he should be a little scared. I think if he thinks he just has a free pass and it's all good to go, then, that can be a little scary. So
I know the power of prayer from your dad, because he's told me that story, that exact story that you
really.
Well, because I had a situation with our daughter, and your dad jumped right in there, Maddie, and started praying for that situation, wow. and within a week, the deal was off. So the power of prayer, you're not just saying that; it is real for parents out there that are dealing with a situation with their son or their daughter. the most important thing you can do is get down on your knees, man, and pray for God's protection and for God to hear your heart and God to answer your prayer. So you've led us right into, obviously, you're on The Price is Right. That's the first time you're on TV. Won $8,000, I believe. But you really jumped into the national eyes of people on, I think it's season 24 of The Bachelor. My wife and daughter, they watch it every episode. And I don't know why, but they do for the entertainment purpose, I'm pretty sure. But you had the world pulling on you in a massive way within that show. And you stuck to your foundation, your belief, your faith. You were applauded by many. You're also criticized by many. I just want to hear your heart looking back on that situation, how you stuck with who you are, and then how you handled the praise and the criticism afterwards. Because we all go through stuff like that when we're in the public's eye a little bit, like the three of us are. I'd love for you to coach us up on that, please.
Yeah. So good. I actually just spoke at a church this past weekend and spoke on this. I think for me, one of the biggest values that I've had to learn in my life before I went on The Bachelor, and especially since coming off of it, is valuing my private life over my public life. And what I mean by that is valuing my time alone with the Lord over anything that I have to say to the world in the name of the Lord. Like, I don't have what I need to give anybody if I'm not first humbling myself before the Lord and receiving from Him. And I think we live in a world that's really quick to everything's public. And so there's not a lot of alone, hidden time just with Jesus, or even time just with yourself. And everything is, okay, let me tweet this, let me post this, just constantly seeking for approval. And I think there's good in that too. I post a lot of speaking videos and a lot of inspirational things that I hope encourage people. But I do think that the reason I have any of that to give is because I spend 2 hours every single morning in God's word and in prayer and in worship and alone. Like no one's there. There's not a camera on. There's nothing. It's just me and God. And I think for me, like, that is where character is forged. That is where convictions are found and developed. That is where my faith is being built. And so that as soon as I walk out of my doors and there's pressures and there's temptations and there's things being thrown at me, or I pull out my phone and I'm reading these things, like I've already done the work of getting my heart right and getting my eyes and heart set on what really matters. Yep. And I think that I wasn't always perfect at that. When I was on the show, for me, I didn't know anything different. Like I felt, as crazy as it sounds, I felt led to go on The Bachelor, which just sounds wild, and people are like, huh? But I fully felt like that was where God was leading me, even though it made no sense. And really throughout the entire time of filming, I just was clinging to the peace and the word that He gave me, even in moments of doubt or loneliness or hardship. And just constantly just like praying. I just would like even lock myself in the bathroom for 10 minutes to get alone, because there wasn't a whole lot of alone time there. And I just would pray, and I just would cry out and ask the Lord for strength and for Him to sustain me. And so that was my time on the show. And then when I came off and it started to air, that brought a whole nother set of struggles and pressures, and just a world that I never known before, because my life was very private before, and now all of a sudden it's very public. And every magazine, news outlet, every even celebrity is like talking about this show and me and the other girls in it. And so it's just a wild thing to be like thrust into. And so for me, it just really like continued coming back to like, okay, Lord, all these people have these things to say about me, but what do you say about me? And I had to like keep running back to that truth, even though it felt like, okay, I grew up hearing this and I know these things, but I had to like continue to remind myself of those things and those truths when you're thrust into something like that. And there's a lot of voices and there's a lot of lies and there's a lot of things that would easily like start to become a label. Like it would be easy for me to start being like, oh, okay, like this is what people are saying about me. And then I start carrying that and I start letting that define me. And I just had to constantly be like, Lord, no, what do you say about me? Please remind me of who I am. And my time with my family was so big during that time too, when I came off the show, because actually it was when COVID hit. And so I spent a lot of time with my family, and we just constantly spent a lot of time just in prayer together. And they were kind of a rock for me too. And so that was super helpful, and just surrounding myself with godly individuals. But for me, on a day-to-day level, I've just had to put up, honestly, boundaries in my life. I don't personally believe that we were ever meant to experience such intense praise or criticism as humans. And so for me, I just try my best to make sure I don't see it, so I can just keep my eyes on Jesus and run my race. Because I found myself, I don't want to get to a place where I'm too high or I'm too low. Like I don't want to base my life on the opinions of other people, because I'm either going to be up here and being like, man, I'm the stuff, or I'm going to be down here feeling like I hate myself and I hate my life and who am I? And so for me, I've just learned to be the most consistent and to be the most, just the way to honor God the most is to just continue to remember that it's all about Him and it's all about serving other people. And the way that I do that is to just like block all of that out and just keep my eyes on the Lord. And so I've done that, pretty intensely, even with my social media. I have someone that kind of filters through all messages for me. I have very just like intense boundaries when it comes to social media and just things that I look at, things that I read. And that's been really important for me. And so that's been really helpful as far as like handling that. But yeah, it's crazy. Like the amount of opinions that come, and the people that feel entitled to their opinions to just like throw them on you like that. And you're like, wait, we're like, why aren't we all on the same team? Like, we're just trying to live life. Like we're just, aren't we all trying to like love life and love others and love ourselves and hopefully love God? But I just found that that's not the world we're really living in, and people have a lot of opinions and they want to throw them on you, and a lot of them are really, really hurtful. And there's been moments where they really affected me. Like when I came off the show, I lost 20 pounds and I was not in the healthiest place. I felt like I went through very intense trauma from the filming, but also from the airing and all of the opinions and all the things being said. And that was really, really hard. But for me, I had to remember like, okay, Lord, you called me to it, so you're going to sustain me through it, and you're my protector. Like, I don't have to worry about defending myself. I don't have to worry about, getting on Twitter and being like, no, this is who I am. You all misunderstand me. You don't really know me. I just had to like fully let that go and be like, Lord, you're my protector. You're my provider. It says in your word too, like vengeance is of the Lord. And so I'm just like anybody who's coming after me and anyone who's trying to attack me, like, and it also just says like in our present suffering, it's like nothing compared to the coming glory. And so I'm just like, okay, anything that I'm suffering or dealing with right now is so small compared to what's coming in the name of the Lord for me. And so, and for the believers. And so I get to just like rest in peace about that. But there's definitely days where it majorly affects me and I have to turn to God's word, or I have to like call my husband or call my mom or dad or call friends and be like, will you just pray for me and remind me of who I am and why I do what I do? And I think that is really, really important in this field too.
Wow. That was really powerful.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, number one. Number two, I would say I was just having a conversation with my sons, and my daughter was in the car too. We're driving home from church yesterday. And I've got to speak this week at our men's group on Acts 28, 1 through 10, which is a really kind of obscure passage. But part of it is Paul gets bit on the hand by a snake, and the people of the island of Malta immediately think he's going to die. They have this kind of worldly concept of karma where it's like, oh, he's a prisoner, so he got bit by a snake because he's a bad guy, and so he's going to die. Well, then he doesn't die. Then they think he's a god. And I was telling the Lord just kind of gave me this insight on like, that's kind of how the crowds can be.
Yeah.
Like 1 second you're awful, the next second you're a god.
Yeah.
And the answer's neither. The answer's, and I was telling them one thing I felt like the Lord gave me wisdom in my career was the people were really never cheering or booing for me. I'm just a pawn in a game. I'm a jersey on a field. And if I play good, you know what they did? They cheered. If I played bad, they booed. And it never, I never took it personal. Yeah. I booed me when I played bad, so like, I get it. I wish I wouldn't have struck out with the bases loaded. I get it. But what's interesting about what you just said was like, in your world, it was you. Like, it wasn't how you played. Like that was like you. So I could see where that would be so much more personal, right? As athletes, even as coaches, right there, the fans are booing if your team wins or cheering if you're like, they're not really booing you really, right? Whereas in your world, like the stuff being said about you
personal
was about you. And I could see where, man, that would be deeply personal. You mentioned a lot there about social media. And I would love, not everybody's a global star like you that has people and has learned some of these things. A lot of it, like me, I'm just a dad trying to navigate my daughter. Like, what am I letting her do? What am I not letting her do?
Yeah.
Like, coach us up on first of all, how did you navigate high school years on social media? And now being through that, similar to what we just had a conversation around dating, like what would you, because we know there's a lot of self-image and a lot of self-esteem issues coming through social media. How would you advise young women on how to handle social media in 2023?
So good. Oh gosh. I believe just like anything that can be used for really good, it can also be used for really bad. And I've seen some of the, even in my own personal life, some of the greatest strengths that I have also be my greatest weakness. I've seen that with social media, it is one of the greatest tools that we have in this world today, to make the name of Jesus known, to encourage people, to relate to people, to meet people in a world that you never would have met them, without social media, to connect with people. So I think it can be a very beautiful thing. I think on the flip side, it can be very dangerous, without boundaries, without care, without caution, without a full awareness and understanding. And I think what I am seeing in the younger generation is that there isn't a ton of awareness. It just is what it is. Like social media is just life, and they just spend all their time and hours on it. Thankfully for me, I actually in high school, like social media had just started becoming a thing. So I didn't grow up like middle school into it, whereas my younger sisters did. So it was even interesting trying to navigate that with them, because I was like graduating when Instagram was really like taking off, And so for me, I don't know, it wasn't a big struggle for me until I got into college. And then I think where I found it to be super harmful, and I know a lot of girls can relate to this, was I struggled with comparison. Yep. And it was constantly like, okay, this is what she's doing and this is what I'm doing, and it feels like what she's doing is better, and this is what I have and this is what she has, and so it feels like what I have is worse. And it very easily can become this whole comparison thing where you can become so discontent with who you are and with what you have. It's wild. You can be having the best day and you can be like in such a good headspace, and then you get on social media and you see, I see this husband that did this incredible thing for his wife, and this girl, friend of mine, who's on this amazing trip in Greece. And, it's like you can start seeing all those things, and then all of a sudden this incredible day that you were having now became this crappy day. And you're like, wait, how come I don't have these things? And how come he's not doing this? And then my husband comes home from work and I'm like, you don't love me. And he's like, what are you talking about? And it's wild how it really can feed that comparison monster, and really just create such discontentment in your own life without even like meaning for it to. I think for me, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give, because I think it's kind of, I hear a lot of people preach on this, and it's only preached on how horrible social media is and like how we shouldn't have it. And I'm like, well, let's be real, because everyone's going to have it. So you're not going to be able to convince, this young girl to just like delete your Instagram and get off social media. I think the best approach is just, who are you following? What are the accounts that you're following, and being intentional with what those accounts look like. I wouldn't recommend following a lot of, celebrities that their whole entire brand and persona of who they are is showing off their body and showing off their money and showing off all these things that say like, hey, I am all of this and I got all of this. And I think that's just training our minds to then want those things, or compare our life to that. And for me personally, like, I don't really follow a lot of guys either. So I would even be careful, like, following the opposite sex and just like, what does that look like? And then I think also just as far as like time standpoint, just how much time are you spending on it? For me, it's like limiting time. I don't want my day to go by and I spent 5 hours of my day, on social media, just scrolling, living in this world that's not really real, when I have real life in front of me that I'm totally neglecting. And so for me, it's even, filling my day with things that matter, to where there's not even really time to get on social media. And then just like there's even like I think a thing on your phone where you can set a timer.
A time limit, yeah.
Yeah. And so I started doing that, and that was helpful because it just like showed me like, okay, you've reached your 30 minutes for the day. Like, I'm kicking you off now. And that was really helpful just to, and I wasn't always perfect. Sometimes I'd be like, snooze, forget, I'm going to keep scrolling. But I do think that it at least gave me the awareness of like, oh, I've spent this much time on it today. And that's what I said my max would be. And so I think those little things I've found to be super helpful. For me, I just see it as honestly just a way of posting and encouraging people, and just like connecting with some friends. And I think when you see it from that healthy perspective, and you don't see it as like, for me, I don't spend a lot of time really scrolling. And so I think that helps me have a healthy perspective throughout my day, because I'm not really constantly paying attention to like what everyone else is doing and how everybody else is living their life. And so, yeah, that would probably be my biggest pieces of advice.
Perfect. I love the comparison monster, because it is a monster. And I love who are you following, not on social media, but also in our life. Matt, that's beautifully said. You've written a book made for this moment. I'm going to get a copy. Our daughter's 17. Your dad told me about the book, and I should have read it by now myself. But I want to make sure I get that, because I can tell just by spending our time with you, you have a phenomenal heart for Jesus. You have a wisdom way beyond your years. And I know that
yes, you do.
God will continue to use you on the platform that you have to point people towards Him. And you were fantastic. You were fantastic.
Yeah.
I know you don't follow a lot of men on Twitter. I'm pretty sure you follow me, though, because of basketball, right? I may be the one, and your husband is what I'm guessing, because of college basketball. I'm not sure, but I'm going to see your dad tomorrow. And
I love it.
I'm going to give him a big hug, because Chris and I are dads of daughters, and we know the battle, and we know the fight is real. But encouragement from him, and encouragement from the product, you, has spoken loudly and clearly to all of us with our time with you. So thank you so much for giving us your time, and may God continue to use you greatly for His kingdom.
Thank you guys so much. I also want to send your daughters a little book myself, where I just give them a special note.
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
We'll follow up with you. Thank you very much, Maddie.
Yes.
Thank you.